So we'll go ahead and get started. Today's topic: how to help your adolescent establish healthy interpersonal relationships and boundaries. My name is Tasha DeWalt. I am a pre licensed clinician working with Eden's Counseling Group. So I'm an LPC intern, gaining my hours towards being a licensed LPC. Today is January 9th, 2025. I'm sorry, put the wrong date right there, 2025. And we'll go ahead and get started. So, as an overview of today's webinar, we'll be understanding interpersonal relationships and what they look like, learning different interpersonal skills to implement for effective and healthy relationships, understanding boundaries and how to develop and or implement them effectively, and also learning the 7 types of boundaries and how to feel confident implementing them. So, this is a great opportunity for you to kind of think about your own interpersonal relationships and boundaries and how you are operating within those so that you're able to help your adolescents be able to navigate healthy interpersonal relationships and boundary setting. Our main topics are going to be learning skills to help your child navigate interpersonal relationships, learning and understanding different types of boundaries, helping your child learn to develop and implement boundaries with confidence, and learning and understanding different types of interpersonal skills, which are all very important to um, maintaining, establishing and maintaining healthy relationships. So, we're going to take an opportunity to have a moment of self reflection. So, parents, I want you to think about all of the interpersonal relationships in your life and ask yourself a couple of questions. Are your interpersonal relationships healthy, or are they in need of improvement? If they are in need of improvement, why? And then also think about your current boundaries. Are you firm in your boundaries? Do you implement them consistently? Is it time for your boundaries to be updated? So I just want you to take an opportunity and think about it, honestly, think about how your interpersonal relationships are operating, and how your boundaries are set up, and see um, if there is some changes that need to be made. Just take a moment for you to reflect on that. And this is also a great opportunity for you to, if you would like, write these questions down and reflect on them further after the webinar. Um, Especially since we are at the beginning of a new year, this is a great time to reassess and reevaluate our relationships and boundaries. Okay, let's move forward. So, what are interpersonal relationships? An interpersonal relationship is a connection or interaction between two or more people. Interpersonal relationships are essential to human development and survival and can help people feel a sense of belonging, improve communication skills, and navigate challenges. So, I know that there are a lot of people that are very introverted and prefer to be alone. You thrive very well being alone and sharing your own space. And that's great. But having those interpersonal relationships, those connections with others is essential to who we are as people and building our character and navigating the environment around us. Like, we have to communicate with others, even if you are a curbside delivery type of person, you still are going to be interacting with others. So it's very important that we understand what interpersonal relationships are and how they work. So it is important that we're also teaching our children how interpersonal relationships work, because setting the foundation early is very essential to how our children grow and develop relationships of their own and are confident in their relationships, and take ownership of their feelings within those relationships. So they are very essential, even if you are an introverted person. Interpersonal relationships are pretty essential. Interpersonal relationships can take place in many contexts, such as family. So you have your, nuclear family, mom, dad, sister, brother. Then you have your extended family, grandparents, great grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins. Interpersonal relationships are also friendships. This can be at school and or work. And so if you have an adolescent around that middle school age, high school age, we know that interpersonal relationships are extremely important to them. And so how we help them navigate those relationships are just as important, because as they continue to grow into young adults and adults, the foundation that we are laying for these interpersonal relationships are going to be so important when it's time for them to go and interview for jobs, go to college and have tours and roommates, and basically just live in the world as a human. So those interpersonal relationships are really, really essential. And so today we're going to be learning how, what those look like and how we can help our kids with those relationships. So here are some interpersonal skills. So we have a visual over here, and that's just a few. But interpersonal skills, what are they? You might think, well, why do I need skills to have relationships? It's very important that we have skills to help us navigate these relationships. So, interpersonal skills are the skills we use to communicate and interact with one another. These skills are essential for developing and maintaining healthy relationships. Again, we're setting the foundation. These skills essentially should be taught from a very young age, so that they are carried with us as we grow into adults. People typically begin to develop interpersonal relationships as soon as they are born. So as we develop, we're learning these interpersonal skills through experiences. So, for example, a child crying or throwing a temper tantrum um, to get their desired results. Like if you don't want to hear your child crying, or you're in the middle of the grocery store and your child is having a meltdown, a lot of times you're inclined to give them what they want so that the behavior does not continue. So, children pick up on that and oftentimes learn how to implement those skills as they get older. Well, if I cry or if I do this and that, then I can get what I want. And that's not always healthy. So we want to make sure that we are communicating and teaching healthy interpersonal skills. As far as interpersonal relationships, we also learn to communicate differently with different people, such as your parents, siblings, coworkers, and teachers. The way I would interact with my parents is definitely probably not the way I'm going to interact with my siblings, because we have a different understanding, we have a different level of respect for one another. My coworkers, I'm not going to necessarily be as free or outgoing with my coworkers as I may be with my family or my friends. So understanding interpersonal relationships and having those skills also helps us determine how to carry ourselves in different relationships and understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate in certain settings. During the teenage years, adolescents may begin to experience more intense and immediate, intimate relationships as they develop into individuals. Therefore, learning interpersonal skills is essential for establishing and maintaining healthy relationships. So, I have experience as an educator. I've been in education for 10 years. I taught in the classroom. I transitioned into a school counselor, and I'm currently a special education coordinator. So I'm very familiar with how important relationships are to adolescent um, children. They take them very seriously. Their feelings are very involved when it comes to these relationships. So, very often I found myself talking about friendship when I had students that came to me for group and individual. What do we want our friendships to look like? How do you carry yourself um, within the friendship? What's okay for you? What's not okay for you? So, if you are the parent of an adolescent, you then understand that those relationships are very, very important to them. So we want to encourage them to have good relationships. Even as young as, first and second grade, they start to become more aware of who they are and what friendship actually is. Um, it may not be as intense as a teenager, but the younger ones definitely are starting to, understand themselves and relationships. So it's okay to start to teach them interpersonal skills as well. Types of interpersonal skills, and this is just to name a few. Of course, there are tons more, but these are ones that really stick out and kind of overlap, especially when it comes to boundary setting as well. So, active listening. This is going to be listening to the words and emotions that people are communicating through their nonverbal behavior. So, making sure that you are maintaining eye contact, nodding occasionally, and asking clarifying questions. So, our nonverbal cues are showing. Um, the person that we are in connection with, that we're listening, that we hear them, that we're interested. Um, I know a lot of times maintaining eye contact can be a little bit intimidating. And I know sometimes culturally it can be seen as, disrespectful. So just be mindful of the cultural aspects of eye contact. But engaging with other people, we need to make sure that our nonverbal cues um, are there. The asking the clarifying questions, if somebody is explaining something to you, saying, you know what, can you expound on that? Or um, what does that mean? Or what do you mean by that? So making sure that you're understanding what the person you're talking to is saying so that you have good understanding. Being assertive, so stating thoughts and feelings and being more confident. This is difficult for a lot of people because a lot of times people feel like being assertive is being confrontational, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Context matters here, but when you are um, having interpersonal relationships, your children having interpersonal relationships, it is okay to tell your child that it is okay to express your thoughts and feelings and being confident in your thoughts and feelings. A lot of times people don't share because they're afraid of the reaction of other people. Lots of kiddos have told me, well, I don't want to say this or I don't want to say that because I'm afraid of what the other person might say, or they may not like me anymore. They may not be my friend. So then that turns into a whole other conversation. Like, okay, if this person is really your friend, you sharing your feelings shouldn't be a problem. It's not necessarily what you share, but how we share it in the context in which we share it in. So, for example, giving your opinion on something, you don't always have to agree with what your friend is saying. That's why we have our own opinions, and we can state our opinions respectfully and confidently. Expressing your feelings. I feel sad because I feel angry because I'm feeling anxious because always following up with why so that we have an understanding of what a person is feeling, and then our actions can be appropriate towards that person. And then having the confidence to say no. That is a really, really, really tough one for not only adolescents, but adults as well. Because no, believe it or not, is a complete sentence. So saying no and standing firm on saying no is a part of being assertive, especially if something is uncomfortable or your child finds themselves in an uncomfortable, uncertain situation. Saying no is absolutely okay. Conflict resolution. So peacefully resolving disagreements and disputes. So it's not uncommon at all for adolescents to be in a disagreement or a dispute about something, whatever it is. And so helping your child understand that sometimes disagreements and disputes can be healthy because it's an opportunity for the parties to talk about the issues that they're having and then go ahead and hash it out appropriately. So, for example, being able to problem solve, compromising, listening. Um, for example, you might have a set of siblings that are arguing over who is going to ride in the front seat. So that's a great time to implement some compromising. Okay, you ride in the front seat on the way there, I ride in the front seat on the way back. Even kiddos as young as elementary school can do compromising and problem solving. Okay, you are on the swing for this amount of time, 5 minutes goes by, and then I get on the swing and you push. Okay, or if we're having a problem with each other, hey, why are we having a problem? Did I say something? Did I do something to upset you, to offend you? And then the person responding and sharing their feelings. That's why I say a lot of this overlaps because feelings are always going to be involved. So, teaching your child the foundation of feelings and that it's okay to express feelings is really going to cover a lot of these interpersonal skills because it all involves communicating and making sure that our feelings are being validated. Empathy, recognizing emotions in others and putting yourself in their shoes. So, again, validating other people's emotions. Okay, you feel angry. Why do you feel angry? There's not always going to be a time where you feel anger about something. So, I am going to feel angry about the same thing because it may not make me angry. Or you might be offended by something and I'm not. Or you may be sad about something, but I'm not. But that doesn't mean that I can't understand and feel where you're coming from. And so we definitely want to make sure that our adolescents are um, showing empathy. Just because it's not something that you've experienced doesn't mean that you can't feel and be respectful and show compassion to someone else. And think about your own empathy. Are you empathetic towards your spouse? Are you empathetic towards coworkers, friends, family members? Does your child see you showing empathy towards other? Do you show empathy towards your child? Oftentimes we forget that um, adolescents, kiddos are very real people with real emotions and opinions and feelings. So we need to take the opportunity to stop and listen and make sure they are being validated as well, just like you would want to be validated as an adult at work um, by your spouse, by your coworker, by a friend. So children want to feel that as well. Offering support, you know, can I help you with that? Is there something that I can do that would make you feel better? And then being compassionate, sharing kind words, even if you are not understanding what that person is going through. That's the whole point of empathy. We may not be going through the same thing, but I can still be kind. I can still offer you support. And then apologizing. That is a hard one for a lot of people because apologizing means that we have to take accountability for something that we may have said or done. So, apologizing is understanding what it means to make a genuine apology and when to apologize. So, acknowledging that you did something offensive to your friend, family member, spouse, coworker, and then expressing genuine remorse. I'm really sorry. It was not my intention to make you upset, make you angry, make you sad. And then not making excuses. Like, if you wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have had to do this, and then you wouldn't have felt that way, because that is not going to be effective at all, because then we're not validating emotions. So we want to teach our adolescents that when it is time to apologize, that we are genuine in the apology, we acknowledge what we did, we take accountability, and then we don't make excuses about it. And then most importantly, we have changed behavior. So an apology should come with change behavior, because if you apologize and then keep doing the same thing, then that's not going to be an apology. So think about how you apologize. So this webinar is really an opportunity, parents, for you to be thinking about your own, again, interpersonal skills. How do you apologize? How do you show empathy? How do you show conflict resolution? Because your children are watching you. So more often than not, when children see a good example of all of these things, they will follow it. So, how can I help my child develop interpersonal skills and healthy relationships? I'll say it again. It's going to start with you examining your own interpersonal skills and relationships. And if you need to make adjustments there, that's going to be really important, because if you're not in a space where you can acknowledge deficits in your own interpersonal skills and relationships, it's going to be really hard for you to help your child navigate interpersonal relationships and skills. So, to help your child develop interpersonal skills and healthy relationships, ensure that you are actively listening to them, that you are teaching them empathy, that you are modeling positive communication behaviors, that you are encouraging open dialogue, providing opportunities for social interaction, and teaching nonverbal communication cues such as eye contact, body language. All of this while considering your child's individual needs and limits, because you have children just like adults who are very introverted, may not necessarily like being around a bunch of people or having a bunch of friends. And so that is okay as well. Um, but still, they need to learn those skills because there are going to be times where communication is very important and they're going to have to express themselves, even if they are introverted and prefer to be alone. So, as I said before, you modeling all of these behaviors is going to be helpful for your child seeing how to interact within a relationship. So, discussing emotions. So, provide a safe space for your adolescent to be able to share their emotions. So often, from my experience as a school counselor, I would ask students, like, hey, do you ever go and talk to mom, dad, whomever, guardian about how you feel? Do you feel like you have a safe space? And most of them would say no. And I would say, well, why not? Well, because my parents are just very busy, or they don't think that children can be stressed or anxious or have problems, or they'll tell me to like go sit down. So often it sounds like the parents were very dismissive of their children and their emotions. So please provide a safe space for your child to talk about their emotions, because when they don't have a safe space, they seek that in spaces that may not be the safest for them, on the internet or with strangers that do not mean them well, and use their vulnerability and them wanting a safe space to um, be a predator. So please provide your child with a safe space to talk about their feelings, because helping them identify and label their emotions helps them to be confident in being able to talk to you regularly. How was your day? How are you feeling? Um, are you angry today? I have an emotions chart. You can print one off of Google very easily, and it's a way to help your child specifically identify how they're feeling instead of saying, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. I'm okay. And then we just end the conversation there. So, an emotions chart is a great way to get more specific about their feelings, so that they can discuss them. Having open communication with your child. So, creating an environment where your child feels comfortable expressing their thoughts and feelings. So, the same thing as with discussing their emotions. It might be something where you and your family have weekly check ins where everybody is able to talk and share their feelings, the highs, the lows of this week. What do you need from me as mom? What do you need from me as dad? This is what I need from you as a child. Having this dialogue and open communication, you are modeling what it is to have those interpersonal skills and build healthy relationships. And it's intentional. And when you make it intentional, it just becomes a routine. So then your child is going to be used to having these check ins and having a safe space to share their emotions. And then as they build their own relationships, it encourages them to be active listeners and to respect the feelings of others. Body language awareness. So, pointing out the importance of eye contact and facial expressions and being actively engaged and nodding our head, making sure that we're paying full attention, because we all want to be heard. We all want our feelings and our thoughts to be validated. So, it's going to be really important that we help our adolescents pick up on body language, because you can start to tell when people are uncomfortable, or that's not really something that they want to talk about, or they're feeling shy, they're feeling awkward. And that's another way to set up boundaries as well. And then being a role model. I've said it for the last few slides, just demonstrating good interpersonal skills yourself by actively listening, showing respect, and managing your own emotions. So, checking yourself, what kind of day have I had? Do I need an opportunity to decompress before I talk to my spouse and my children? Because I want to make sure that I am not carrying over the stress from work into my home and then being snappy with my family. So taking some time to decompress, it's absolutely okay to say, hey, give mom a minute to get myself together and then we'll chat. Give dad a second to gather myself and then we'll chat. So it's very important that you take care of your own feelings and emotions, parents, so that you're able to um, demonstrate the skills that your child needs. Making sure that when your child is talking to you, you are putting your attention on them. You put down your phone and you focus your attention on them. Maybe you turn the TV down or turn it off and focus your attention on them, asking them follow up questions, asking them clarifying questions as well. Children are so smart and they catch on so quickly. So if you make this a part of your routine and your raising of your child, it typically is going to be ingrained in them to do the same thing and build those relationships. So now let's get into boundaries. Again, the boundaries and the interpersonal skills are going to be overlapping as well. Um, because personally, I don't believe that there can be healthy relationships without some form of boundaries. It's very important, and a lot of people are hesitant to develop and implement boundaries, but we're going to get into it. So, boundaries help determine what is and what is not okay in a relationship, whether that be with friends, partners, co-workers, teachers, or family members. So, any and everyone can have a boundary. Doesn't matter what they are to you in your life. Ideally, we put boundaries in place to protect our well being. They help us build trust, safety, and respect in relationships. Um, so often, if we don't have boundaries set up, then the behaviors that we don't like continue because the people that are engaging in the behaviors think that it's okay because we haven't said anything. So think about the boundaries you have developed for yourself. Think about the boundaries you've developed for your spouse, the boundaries you've developed for your children, your friends, your coworkers. What do those boundaries look like? Are your boundaries effective? Do you respect the boundaries of others? How do you communicate your boundaries? So often we need to hold up a mirror to ourselves because um, we have difficulty with establishing effective boundaries, or maybe we are able to establish the boundaries, but we're not very good at implementing them, or we're afraid that our boundaries are going to cause us to lose people out of our life, which may not be a bad thing, because your boundaries, again, are what is acceptable or unacceptable to you. So with our children and teaching them boundaries, it's the same thing when it comes to friends, when it comes to teachers, when it comes to their own family members. Boundaries are okay. And it's okay to teach your child that they can share their boundaries and you support them in their boundaries. For example, you may have a child that may not want to hug a certain family member and they can respectfully say, I don't feel comfortable hugging that person, without the parent saying, that's so and so, you give them a hug. That's not respectful, right? So we want to respect our children's boundaries because when we're pushed out of our boundaries and comfort zone, it causes us to shut down, which is not a good thing. So think about your boundaries and how you feel if your boundaries are crossed. And then think about your children as well. So we want to make sure that we are developing and then implementing healthy boundaries. So we have some different types of boundaries. So we have physical boundaries. So that's your privacy or personal pace and preference of physical touch. Again, you have some people that love hugging. That's how they embrace. That's how they greet other people. Then you have some people that are like, I just am very uncomfortable with being hugged or touched. They may have trauma attached to that. You never really know. It may be because they don't want to, or they are really nervous about the spreading of germs, especially after being in a pandemic. So people have different reasons that they don't want physical touch, and we respect their boundaries. And we say, okay, no problem. They might want a handshake or a high five or something else. So we need to make sure that we're respecting physical boundaries. So teaching your adolescent about their body parts and calling them by their actual name, and sharing with your child. If you don't want somebody close to you, then you can respectfully say, hey, you're a little bit too close. Do you mind scooting over? Or being able to say, that makes me uncomfortable. Teaching your child those different types of phrases, and helping them understand what is comfortable, what's not comfortable, what's appropriate and not appropriate. We also have emotional boundaries. So, respect for the other person's emotions and feelings. Um, we live in such a chaotic time. You just don't know what somebody is dealing with personally or with family members at work. So, we want to be very mindful of overstepping emotional boundaries. If we see that someone is sad or angry, you can say, hey, are you okay? But we don't necessarily want to pry. We want to give the person the space to share, um, if they want to, but you just still being supportive and compassionate. Um, so making sure we are validating people's feelings and that we are not overstepping and being nosy, and trying to pry, but still allowing a person to know that you are there for them if they need that. Intellectual boundaries. So thoughts, intellectual beliefs, and ideas being respected by the other person. So that may come with talking about religion, politics, anything of that nature. You may not necessarily agree, but we still want to be respectful of people's thoughts and beliefs. And it doesn't have to turn into a confrontation. Okay, if that's what you choose to believe, or if that is near and dear to you, great. It may be an opportunity for you to actually learn a little bit of something, even if you don't necessarily agree. So we want to make sure that we are teaching our children the same things. Everybody's not always going to agree with you. Everybody is not going to share the same belief or share the same sense of urgency about certain things, but we still want to be respectful. We still want to make sure that there's a boundary. We have time boundaries, so timeliness and respecting the other person's availability to spend time with you. So making plans and keeping plans, showing up when you say that you're going to show up, or if you're not able to show up, respectfully letting that person know in an ample amount of time so that they can adjust and change their schedule as necessary. Um, Same thing, being at work on time. That's an expectation. So being at school on time. I had a kiddo that told me like he got really upset because he was always late to school, and mom was like, "Well, no big deal." Well, it was a big deal for him. So being respectful of time is very important. If you know you are a person that is habitually late to any and everything, giving yourself ample amount of time to get ready and get there. Any unforeseen circumstances that might block you from getting to where you need to be on time, we definitely want to make sure that we are respecting the time of others. Material boundaries, respecting someone's personal property when it comes to giving and lending. We want to make sure that we would treat someone else's things as we would treat our own. If we've borrowed something and it becomes broken or misplaced, making sure that we're able to replace it or offering to replace it. Validating the person's feelings about their materials. You might have teenagers that have their own room. Teaching your teenagers to knock before they enter one another's room, or asking if they can borrow something. Same thing about your room and your personal space, everything in the home. Having a conversation with the family, like I don't mind you, sharing, but ask me first. So we want to make sure that we're respecting um, other people's materials. And same thing at school with our adolescents. We don't go into anybody's backpack without their permission, their locker. Hey, is it okay if I borrow this pen? We don't want to create the idea that we are entitled to someone else's personal things just because we have access to it. We need consent. We need to ask. Spiritual boundaries, respecting someone's personal belief and spiritual journey. So you may not subscribe to a religion, and that is perfectly okay. There are millions of people that do. And so when we have conversations about religion, respecting their conversations, or if you don't even want to be involved in conversations dealing with anything spiritual or related to religion, simply excusing yourself and being kind about it. Like, I really don't engage in, talks about religion or spiritual journeys or belief. It makes me really uncomfortable. There's a way that we can share what our boundaries are respectfully without being offensive to other people. And then sexual boundaries. So, comfort with sexual touch and consent from the other person. Extremely, extremely, extremely important. We definitely want to teach our adolescents that consent, when anything that has to do with another person's physical space, we want to make sure that we've asked for consent, that everybody involved is comfortable, and all of the feelings that go along with that. There have been so many people that have experienced trauma related to physicality and things of a sexual nature. So we want to be very mindful and, of course, appropriate when we're having these conversations with our adolescents. But it is also important to let our adolescents know that they have their own autonomy with their body. Um, and that boundaries are extremely important. So, boundaries can sound like a few things. So, I am not comfortable talking about this, or I'm not comfortable going there. I need some time to think. So, if there's a decision to be made, or somebody's asking you to make a decision and you're just not quite ready, telling yourself or your adolescent, hey, I just need some time to think about it. I'll get back to you tomorrow, or I'll get back to you next week, depending on what you're making a decision about. Um, let's say somebody asks your child to go to a party or to come over and play a game, teaching them that there is a boundary for time. Hey, I can only stay for an hour, or I can only stay for 45 minutes, or I need to communicate and ask my parents first. Um, my time is valuable too. Please be more considerate. So often we, again, don't express our boundaries because we're afraid that it's going to be confrontational and we're not sure how the other person is going to respond. But it is very important because this is how we can easily navigate relationships and who needs to share our space and who really doesn't. Um, some other ways that boundaries may sound, especially when it comes to work: I don't answer emails after 7. um, that isn't appropriate. Please stop. I hear what you're saying, but I have made my decision. So if you are already firm on the decision that you've made and somebody is trying to get you to make a different decision, um, I'm firm on that. I am not going to change my decision. So boundaries can sound like a few different things. You're not wrong for having boundaries. Um, and it is important to express to your adolescents that they are not wrong for having boundaries either. So, how can I help my child develop boundaries? So, it is important for adolescents to create and advocate for their own boundaries by defining key personal preferences on communication and space. Adolescents can have the control to develop healthy relationships and advocate for themselves. So, being an advocate for your child and showing your child how to be an advocate for themselves is extremely important. So here are some key strategies that you can use to help you make the connection with your child. So encourage your child to identify emotions. So this is going to be the theme um, pretty much in everything: the relationships, Boundary setting, communicating, everything is going to involve sharing some type of emotion. So, teaching your child to label their feelings. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I'm embarrassed. They need to know that it is okay to have feelings and that they have a safe space in which to share their feelings. And again, it comes with you modeling how to share your feelings. They need to know what it is they are feeling first to effectively set limits and boundaries. So, for example, if your child has a friend that does something to them to make them angry, and your child realizes what made them angry in that moment and about what their friend did, it is okay for your child to express, hey, that is a boundary for me because that action makes me angry. Being able to identify unacceptable actions and behaviors. So, the first step to setting boundaries is to be able to notice when people around you are behaving in ways that are unacceptable. So, um, for example, if your child shares with you that they have a friend that uses profanity or vulgar language or is physically inappropriate with their peers, and they acknowledge that as unacceptable, uncomfortable behavior, that is a great opportunity to set up a boundary and say, that makes me uncomfortable. Please don't behave that way in front of me. And allow your children to tell you what their boundaries are for you as well. I know that that sounds like, hey, whoa, like my child is giving me a boundary, but children are still people. Yes, they're your children, but they are individuals. And so, again, all individuals need a boundary. It's very healthy. Um, Teaching your children to have respect for others' boundaries. So, healthy relationships are built upon mutual respect and ongoing communication. Ensure that your teen knows it's just as important to honor someone else's boundaries as it is to ask them to honor theirs. And so, if we want people to respect us in our space and our boundaries, then we must do that to others. I mean, it just goes without saying. So, we need to be respectful of other people's boundaries, even if we don't agree, even if we don't share similar boundaries, we still need to be respectful. Explaining the risk of not setting boundaries. So sometimes it's much easier for an adolescent to just let things go or not say anything when a friend or a dating partner crosses the line. But not setting boundaries is very risky because that allows the behavior to continue. And again, um, so often it's hard for adults to set boundaries because they're afraid of how the other person is going to respond to that boundary. So it's even more difficult for children to set boundaries because they're in an age, the adolescent age, where friendships and being liked is super, super important. So, setting a boundary or not going along with what everybody else is doing, they may feel like is the worst thing in the world. But teaching them that, not having boundaries can potentially put you in a lot of predicaments that you're not comfortable with. So, understanding how to say no and set boundaries is really important. Even if nothing serious happens within the relationships, not setting boundaries can lead to resentment or damage to the friendship. So if you have a child that just goes with everything that their friends are doing, and they want to set a boundary or they know that this is just not really them or how they feel, they can start to have resentment and issues with their friends because they didn't set the boundaries. And then again, just like with the interpersonal skills, I'm sorry, making sure that you're leading by example. So if your child sees you intentionally setting thoughtful boundaries, they will naturally learn that it's a part of successful adult communication. So lead by example. So that means parents that you're going to have to check yourself very, very, very often because your kiddos are indeed watching you for sure. So please lead by example. And it's a great opportunity, again, for you to do a check in with yourself and see where are you with your boundaries and how are you operating in your relationships. And signs that your adolescent could use better boundaries if they are frequently involved in drama with their friends or peers, if they struggle with making decisions, if they seem to just go along with what others are saying or doing without voicing their own thoughts, they are constantly tired, they complain about feeling anxious or guilty constantly, they're frequently passive aggressive, they seem terrified of rejection, They are extreme with their trust. They either trust everyone without question or they have no trust at all in anyone. So these, of course, are not always signs that your child could use better boundaries, but they are a pretty good indicator that your child needs to have a discussion about expressing feelings and setting boundaries. So, while individually these signs may not indicate poor boundaries, if they are still displaying one or more, it's something to keep an eye on for sure. And again, this is where having check ins and conversations as a family and creating that open space and safe space for your child is really important for them to come to you. Now, am I saying they're going to run to you with every single thing? No. But knowing that they do have a safe space and they're not being shut down and their feelings are being validated is going to be very helpful with them setting boundaries and having healthy interpersonal relationships. And so this is an opportunity. If anybody has any questions, you can absolutely put them in the chat box for them to be addressed. And just a little bit about myself. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a pre-licensed clinician, so I am an LPC intern. I am in my practicum course for my postmaster's LPC program. And I've been with Eden's Counseling Group since August. I have 10 years of experience as an educator, a classroom teacher, school counselor, and now special education coordinator. Got my Bachelor of Science in Family and Consumer Sciences from Texas State University in San Marcos, and my Master of Education in Professional School Counseling from the University of St. Thomas. As an LPC intern, I will work with children, teens, young adults, and professionals who are navigating life stressors. I use a range of techniques to better serve my clients' unique situations while focusing on solution focused and behavioral approaches. I am dedicated to providing an innovative and therapeutic experience to my clients. I love working with clients who struggle with anxiety, relationship issues, depression, self image. And I'm open to working with clients on other things as I grow in my learning and understanding of the practice. And I am also devoted to creating an individualized plan that meets each client's where they are in the present moment, but also focusing on where they are going. So for more information, you may call and or text Eden's Counseling Group to schedule a free consultation or to book a counseling session. And thank you for joining me. If you are here, you may fill out the questionnaire in the feedback form in the chat box. And to contact me or book an appointment, my contact information is here on the screen. Thank you so much.